Historic buildings are more than stone and wood. They represent memory, identity, and cultural continuity. But in today's world of globalization, climate change, and rising social demands, preserving architectural heritage has become increasingly complex. In this video, let us explore how heritage conservation operates through three key dimensions: international context, sustainability, and ethics, and how these dimensions interact and sometimes conflict with one another. So, what is architecture conservation? Architecture conservation refers to the protection and maintenance of historic buildings and their surrounding environments. There are four main approaches to this, which include preservation, restoration, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Preservation focuses on maintaining and repairing existing materials, ensuring minimal intervention to their original form. Restoration involves returning a building to its appearance at a specific period, usually at the most significant time in its history, by removing later alterations, such as reconstructing missing features. Rehabilitation adapts a building for modern needs while keeping its fundamental historical characters. Reconstruction involves recreating a demolished or severely damaged building using new materials. Although each method differs, they share the same goal: to protect cultural heritage while allowing buildings to remain functional and relevant in contemporary societies. Today, conservation faces major pressures. Rapid urbanization increases demand for land and infrastructure. According to the United Nations, 68% of the world population will live in cities by 2050. This increases construction, land demand, and put pressure on historic centers. Global tourism also places stress on fragile heritage sites. Climate change threatens structural stability, but at the same time, financial resources are limited. This creates a fundamental tension. How do we protect the past while adapting to modern needs? Architecture conservation matters at a global scale, and heritage conservation is shaped by international cooperation. Historical monuments contribute significantly to many countries' economies thanks to the tourism industry, while being a symbol of their cultural richness, long history, and uniqueness. According to UNESCO, heritage tourism represents a major share of global cultural tourism, contributing billions annually to local economies. There are more than 1,100 World Heritage Sites worldwide, across more than 160 countries. Organizations such as UNESCO and International Council on Monuments and Sites promote global protection standards such as minimal intervention, authenticity, and reversibility. These institutions also introduced important documents like the Athens Charter for the Restoration of Historic Monuments and the Venice Charter to establish principles in order to guide national laws and encourage countries to preserve monuments for future generations. However, globalization also creates challenges. The case of Venice shows how mass tourism can threaten heritage. It is undeniable that tourism supports the economy, but it also accelerates structural erosion, damages marine ecosystems, and increases flooding vulnerability due to the negative effect of large cruise ships on Venice's already fragile foundation and infrastructure. Although there have been regulations to ameliorate this, the city will require a lot more time to recover. Moreover, Venice is also having a problem with a shrinking population due to tourism. This dreamy city receives around 20 to 25 million tourists per year, while the resident population continues to decline. By 2025, there were fewer than 50,000 permanent residents in the historic center. This threatens Venice's natural life rhythm. A shrinking population leads to cultural erosion, as there are less schools, traditional artisan workshops, and local markets than facilitations to accommodate tourists. Venice risks becoming a stage admired by visitors, but no longer lived in by its community. This shows that heritage is not just about preservation, but also economic and social tension. Sustainability has become central to conservation. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, Buildings account for 37% of global CO2 emissions. Sustainable conservation seeks to balance environmental responsibility with cultural protection. Adaptive reuse, which is transforming old buildings for new purposes while preserving their historical value, is an important strategy. This approach reduces demolition waste, improves energy efficiency, revitalizes neighborhoods, and supports local economies. Studies show that reusing a building can reduce embodied carbon, which is carbon emitted during material production and construction, by 50 to 75% compared to demolition and rebuilding. Yet, sustainable reuse is not always simple. Some historic buildings require rare materials to replicate original designs. For example, the restoration of Notre Dame Cathedral required approximately 1,300 oak trees. This raises environmental questions about resource use and carbon emissions. Energy performance also remains a challenge, as historic buildings were not designed for modern efficiency standards. Preservation itself is an ethical choice, as historic buildings connect us to our cultural identity. It is irreplaceable to the progression of our society. However, governments must balance heritage investment with social welfare needs. The example with the reconstruction of Notre Dame demonstrates this dilemma. Over 800 million euros were donated, and more than 100 oak trees were used in this project. This sparked debate on the ethical questions about resource allocation. Should hundreds of millions of euros be mobilized rapidly for a monument, while housing shortages and energy poverty persist? This reveals that conservation decisions are not purely technical, they are political and ethical. Ethical principles also guide how restoration is conducted. For example, the Colosseum in Rome was stabilized without reconstructing missing parts. Original stones were consolidated rather than replaced. This minimal intervention approach respects authenticity while ensuring structural safety. In conclusion, architectural heritage preservation operates within a dynamic system shaped by international doctrine, environmental responsibility, and ethical decision-making. These dimensions influence one another and sometimes conflict. Future conservation must adopt a more integrated and adaptive framework, ensuring that historic architecture remains culturally meaningful, environmentally responsible, and socially balanced in a modern world.